And now, Michigan Reimagined with Chris Buck.
So the coronavirus pandemic has significantly disrupted virtually every facet of our lives, but culture and education venues shared in the disruption as well. Here to discuss how recent events have affected Impression 5 Science Center is the Executive Director Erik Larson. Welcome, Erik.
Hey, Chris. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's my pleasure completely. So for those not familiar, tell us a little bit about Impression 5. Where is it located and what all do you do?
Yeah, so Impression 5 is an interactive, dynamic learning environment. It's a hands-on museum located in downtown Lansing, just a couple of blocks from the state capitol. And the real goal of Impression 5 is to engage families in an opportunity to what we call play, create, and challenge together. So we would like to create exhibits and educational programs that allow families to play together with science, to create new ideas and things using science, and to challenge their understanding of science. And that's been the goal for almost 50 years now.
Well, let's talk about that for a second. I understand there is a milestone on the horizon. Tell me what's the date for that?
Yeah, so in April of 2022, Impression 5 will officially turn 50, which is just an incredible milestone and accomplishment when you think about the number of businesses that don't last 50 years. There's a significant accomplishment in reaching that milestone, but we're really seeing it as more than just, hey, celebrating the last 50 years of history. We're really trying to think about this in a way of how do we use it for a launch pad or a springboard, if you will, for what Impression 5 will be like for the next 10 or 20 or hopefully 50 years. And so obviously the pandemic has interrupted some of that planning, but we're still pushing forward through it. And our hope is that what we can do is use this moment to celebrate the history, but also write the chapters for our future progress.
So it usually takes a dynamic group of partners to establish that kind of longevity. So tell me about board of directors, other stakeholders. Who do you rely on to help you guys meet your goals?
Yeah, so just like with any other 501c3 nonprofit, we have a governing board that's made up of about 20 to 25 individuals that meets quarterly. Several committees of that board that are much more active depending on what the immediate strategic goals of the organization are. So they play a big role in helping us align resources and getting us kind of to think outside the silos so we can make sure that we continue to innovate and create programs and exhibits that are captivating and meaningful to our audience. And then beyond the board of directors, we've just been so fortunate to have an amazing group of individual and corporate and private foundation partners over the last, obviously, almost 50 years, but even most recently in the last 10 to 15 years in a period of time in which we've kind of reinvented the entire Science Center. And so many of those corporations are very familiar names that you would hear in the greater Lansing community, and then we've also been successful in getting some large government grants over the past couple of years to do some big funding initiatives. But then if you go down to the next step of stakeholders or shareholders, it's the families of Michigan. 80% of our revenue is generated by those folks visiting the Science Center. And so it's really a pretty complex mix of all of those things coming together to make sure we're successful.
So for those who aren't aware of our last recording, when you and I spoke last, you brought in a CEO of a local firm who wanted to share with us about an exhibit that you had that was really hand in glove with kind of what Lansing's roots are, right? The manufacturing and technology, and we have so much science and industry here in this town. Can you share just a quick nugget of the things you do that would matter to local employers? It seems like you tend to have things in there that local children can get interested in, and that can potentially help them find their path in life and potentially get employment here with a company in town.
Yeah, Chris. I mean, I think you nailed one of the initiatives from local companies right on the head. There is, it's kind of talent development, employment pipeline. The more kiddos that we can have excited, engaged in scientific process, manufacturing, the things that are the things that we focus on, which are science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Those skill sets are applicable across many different career paths. And And you mentioned Wendy from TechSmith, who was specifically invested in Impression 5 in that exhibit because it does just that. It's helping get kids exposed to that critical thinking, that problem-solving process, not necessarily because we're trying to force them into one career or the other, but if you give them an experience, then they can pick what they're interested in. And I think that's a number one or a big reason why companies get involved. But I think another big reason is that places like Impression 5 and the zoo and libraries and active parks and those things that are places where people spend their time with their families are a huge piece of the fabric of what a community is. And a community that has strong cultural art organizations and recreation opportunities is a much more attractive place to acquire talent, to if you're having a hard time developing from within, to attract new talent. And we see, I think Impression 5 plays a big role in that. And I think the companies that have decided to engage with the Science Center also see that it's a benefit for their own employees and their families, and also a talent development strategy for future.
Right on. So the pandemic, I got to ask, so as an indoor tourism destination, I would imagine that the pandemic was monumentally disruptive. Am I correct?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Do you have a specific question, or you want me to just give you our experience?
I was just going to say, how much, strain did this time, cause on your financial position? How did your board of directors help you react? How did you navigate through?
Well, first of all, it's a huge hit. We've been very proud for the last decade to work towards an operating model of 80% of our operating expenses covered by our earned revenue. So people walking in the door, buying memberships, spending money in our store, and purchasing, access to educational programs. For the last 10 years, that's made up an 80-20 business model, which is one of the strongest nonprofit models until you can't generate any earned revenue, which is exactly what the pandemic did. It forcing us to shutter completely, as with everybody last March, and then trying to navigate our way through. We were fortunate to receive the disaster loan, both PPPs, and those helped us kind of keep the team together. We went into this pandemic with one sole focus, was to keep the team together, because the only way we can emerge from this is to have that team in place ready to go. And so we used that in a way with our board of directors to connect with all the resources that were coming out of the federal government, but also all of the opportunity to re-engage with our donors in the community. And we had some very big foundations and corporations step up because they saw us innovating new programs. They weren't just going to give us money, without us pushing forward. And so there was a combination of the resources through the federal government and state government, I should say, as well, but also a combination of some of our big funders coming together to help us create things that we've never done before, things that we wanted to do. They were kind of out on the horizon, but the pandemic and forcing us to shut down forced us to pivot. I hate that word, but forced us to look differently and to innovate and to engage in the audience. And as you stated in the opening, we suffered through that, but the kids that were trying to gain education and be through virtual instruction suffered more than anybody in this group. And we felt it was really important for us to try and create some really real, live, dynamic opportunities for kids to keep engaged in STEM. And we think those programs that we built through the pandemic are actually going to be successful for us post-pandemic. It's been very, very hard because we've had to change things every couple of weeks. You're constantly waiting for a new executive order or a new restriction. And so the team has had to be incredibly nimble and willing to do hard work. And I think through all of it, it's been obviously horrible because there's so many people that have been sickened and even lost their lives through this. But from a business standpoint, from Impression 5, it's hurt. We're getting through it, but I think it will make us stronger.
You keep mentioning team, which is a great word. How big is that team that you have over there?
Impression 5 employs regularly about 27 to 30 employees. We went into the pandemic with around 30. Unfortunately, we lost a couple of employees because they just had to make choices. They had littles at home that they needed to instruct and unfortunately had to leave the workforce. which was painful because it's hard to lose any member of your team, specifically a team that's a good team. And so we're still at that same number. The restrictions have hurt us a little bit because we usually dial up in the summer. We have a large educational program called Summer Labs, and we'll usually hire 8 or 12 more people during the summer to make sure we can deliver those classes. But with the current restrictions, which is kind of 50% of normal for classes like that, for camps like that, we weren't able to. We didn't have the need to hire people. And so that's hurt us a little bit because obviously the more kids we can serve, the stronger the Science Center is. But I really think I'm very optimistic for a strong fall, and I think we're going to see I think we're moving in the right direction.
So as of this recording, which is June 1st of 2021, what are your restrictions at this point? Are you allowed to have a decent crowd in there now, and are you open?
Yeah, we are open. We're open 4 days a week, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Chris, to be completely transparent with you, our self-imposed restrictions are slowing us more than the restrictions that are currently in place from the government. So as we are kind of dialing things up, keeping our team safe, making sure that our practices are in place to make sure our guests feel safe, we're taking a slow kind of methodical approach through that because we do not want to lose any of our customer base trust. And so we're currently right now operating at about 20% of normal capacity on those 4 days. As the numbers continue to plummet, the COVID-related numbers for cases and infection rate, as those continue to plummet, we just keep dialing that up. And I think over the next month or so, we'll get back to something that is looking relatively normal. We will still only operate. We usually operate 6 days a week, but right now we're going to operate 4. We're going to reserve those other 2 days a week because we still have educational programs that we need to do through all summer, and we need to make sure that we don't burn our team out. So through the next several months, we'll be open 4 days a week to the general public. You do not have to reserve tickets. You can just show up at the Science Center. If we're at capacity, we'll put you in a virtual line like you would at your favorite restaurant, and we'll send you a text when it's your turn to come into the Science Center. And then once we get to September, we'll revisit where everything is at, what the team's capacity looks like, and make a plan for the next phase of the business model.
So what kinds of exhibits or programs would people see there now, going on Thursday through Sunday? Anything special? I mean, I'm sure it's all special, but do you have anything in particular that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I mean, we have a traveling exhibit coming in that'll open at this June. It's Thomas and Friends, the famous Thomas the Tank Engine train set. And we really made that decision to really kind of re-engage with our young families in the area, get them engaged. Because one of the things that we've seen through this process is we've lost a lot of membership accounts. And so as we reopen, we want to make sure that we're putting something compelling for those young families to re-engage back into the Science Center. So that's the traveling exhibit that'll open in June, and it'll be with us until January. And of course, and if people don't know this, we take a great deal of pride of prototyping, developing, fabricating, and installing all of our own exhibits. So we do bring a traveling exhibit in once a year, but as you go through the 60,000 square feet that is the public areas inside Impression 5, the rest of those exhibits have all been designed and built on site, even including our 2-story water room, or our most recent exhibit we just opened up called Smash, which is all about the facility for rare isotope beams at Michigan State University. Those things are all developed and built right on site, and we think they provide really cool, unique experiences for kids of all ages, but specifically kids from 2 to about 14 and whoever they decide to bring with them. So we think there's a lot of neat engagement. We're also located right downtown, so you can come down to the Science Center, visit us, hop on the river trail, go up to Rotary Park, hang out in beautiful downtown core of the city. And we are ready and able to see visitors now on those 4 days a week and look forward to that.
Well, that's fantastic. I'm glad to hear that you're coming out the other end of this. It sounds like you've got a nice plan for the summer and then the fall beyond. And that's really great. So where can listeners get more information about Impression 5?
The easy way is probably just the website, which is impression5.org. We're also on Facebook and on Instagram. I just would like to, as your listeners hear this interview, we're looking for all people who would like to engage in this 50th celebration. You know, with us turning 50, there's several generations of folks that have come through the Science Center from every county in the state of Michigan. And we want to capture their stories. Maybe they have vintage photos of their children in the Big Mouth or something in an exhibit at the Science Center. We really want to find a captivating way to engage the community in celebrating this milestone, not just have a big party, but do some things throughout the 12 months. So if you want information on that, that's at the website as well. Excellent.
Impression5.org. Impression, singular, right? No S.
Correct.
Wonderful. Correct. We've been speaking with the Executive Director Erik Larson from Impression 5 Science Center, navigating the pandemic and coming out the other side. Best of luck to you, Erik. I'm grateful you're in our community.
Thanks, Chris. We appreciate you.